Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's time now for our keynote address, The Future of Mobile Entrepreneurship in India. And our speaker for the panel, for the session is Mr. Mohit Bhatnagar, Managing Director, Sequoia Capital. Mohit is currently a Managing Director with Sequoia Capital India and serves on the board of Prism Payments, Conviva, Ujjivan Microfinance, IMI Mobile, IDX, Knowlarity Communications, and Micromax Mobile. Prior to joining Sequoia Capital, Mohit served as the Senior Vice President at Bharti Airtel. Earlier, Mohit co-founded BrightPod, a wireless startup in the United States. Let's hear it for Mr. Mohit Bhatnagar, please.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Good to see mobile entrepreneurship thriving in NCR. What I request is for everybody standing up, if you guys just want to come a little bit closer, let's keep this a little bit more interactive than a boring one-way ramble. It'll just make my life easier as well. Yeah, and I think the way we've constructed this, I have a few slides that I'm going to lead off with, but the real meat hopefully is in the questions that you guys are going to ask me right after this. So feel free to start jotting them down and and be ready to have a little bit more engaging conversation in after a few slides. Yeah, guys by the door, if you don't mind, just come and take a seat and we'll get started. All right, so. I'm going to break this presentation up into two parts. The first one, I'm going to talk a little bit about why it's really fun to be a mobile entrepreneur right now. There's some very interesting, larger trends globally going on that I think we should all leverage off. And then the second part, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the key messages that we've actually experienced at Sequoia through our companies, which hopefully are useful to you guys as you start off your own companies as well. But before that, a quick story. Every day in Africa, a gazelle wakes up. It knows that it must run faster than the lion or it will be killed. Every morning, a lion wakes up in Africa. It knows that it must outrun the gazelle or it will starve. So it doesn't quite matter whether you're a lion or a gazelle. When the sun comes up, you better start running. I think that's pretty interesting for the lives we lead as well, isn't it? If you don't quite wake up in the morning and figure out how you're going to get better, work harder, or innovate faster, you're probably going to get pretty irrelevant pretty soon. And I think that's where mobile actually starts, and that's what makes it so exciting, is just the amount of change going into the ecosystem that we live in. Here are a few slides I stole from Mary Meeker's recent presentation, which you guys should definitely download off the web and take a look. Here's what it says. Remember the days when we first saw our first iPod and how excited we got? This was the coolest thing, right? Think about that. And there were questions not that long back whether tablet as a new category would survive or not, and so on and so forth. This thing is changing and changing fast. If you thought that was good, along came Android. Android has actually grown 4 times faster than the iPhone. Think about that. And this is really, really relevant for us in India, because clearly because the price points we all deal with, and they've flashed a Micromax phone, and that's because I paid him for it. We sit on the Micromax board. But given our price points in India and emerging markets in general, smartphones are now coming at sub-$100. Tablets are coming at $100. And that's basically going to drive the proliferation of smartphone devices like you've never seen it before into the hands of consumers. Already, if you look around you, folks on your table will be carrying Android devices. And it's not very far off that you'll be sitting with your mom or your kid or your dad or your sister, helping them understand what an app store is all about. That wonderful experience that we all went through when we first downloaded our first apps is something that everyone's going to be doing very, very soon, very, very quickly. And I think that's the opportunity that you as a mobile entrepreneur today have in front of you. You don't need to be limited by some of the small statistics of India today. You need to think outside the box. You need to think of platforms like Android that can give you a global marketplace that you get out and play in. And that's incredibly exciting. Here are a few notes. These are some Sequoia internal notes that we took out of the recent developer conference at Apple, which was done earlier, I think about a month back. Here are some stats. This is what makes you feel happy as a mobile application developer or a mobile startup anywhere in the world. Apple paid out $2.5 billion to developers in 1 year. That was the same amount that they'd paid in the entire history before that. So they've paid out a $5 billion to developers worldwide, and $2.5 billion out of that was just done in the last 12 months. Think about that. The rapid amount of change and quick change that's happening in terms of monetization of Apple applications. They've got 400 people who've actually loaded up their credit cards onto the iTunes just to make the buying behavior much easier and make it the easiest thing to do in terms of without too many clicks and entry points and so on and so forth. Think about that again. We complain a lot about payment options and the lack of them in our country, of course. But whoever said that we need to be limited by our boundaries? Here are 400 million people who've actually put out their credit cards and are ready to make a simple buy if you have an application that can catch their attention and get them engaged. So the ball is really in our court to try and get out there in front of them and be able to have something that's pretty compelling for them to use. 650,000 applications in the App Store, already almost half of them moving towards the iPad. So a clear shift away from just phones into the tablet space, and I think watch that space. It's going to be pretty incredible even for our markets here in emerging parts of the world. 30 billion cumulative downloads. Below are some of the interesting new launches or announcements that they had at the recent Apple conference. Again, if you're an iOS-centric company or you have a play in that space, these are things you need to keep a track of. Interestingly, they've gone with their own mapping application. They're actually throwing out the Google stuff. So Apple's got a whole new integrated maps application. It's got graphics. It's got turn-by-turn directions. It's something that you need to start keeping a track of if that's an ecosystem you start to play in. Remember Siri? It was kind of broken, didn't quite work, accents, so on and so forth. It looks like they're not giving up on it. They're going to keep plugging away. So that's an interesting new trend that's happening. Voice interface is something that we all have longed for. There is serious R&D and serious effort going into trying to make that really come alive. Social networks are here to stay. Clearly, the Apples of the world understand that, and they're actually integrating much tighter with someone like Facebook. There's been a lot of interesting single sign-on kind of functionality tie-ins with the latest Apple releases. Passbooks, which is the payments aspect we talked about earlier, only gets better. Interestingly, look at the last bullet. What other verticals can we now ride and grow on the back of smartphones? Healthcare is a great example. If you really double-click on that, you'll find there's a host of different vertical applications. We often get the question as investors, what are you guys investing behind? These are the kinds of ideas that would be reasonably differentiated, where you take mainstream traditional businesses, whether it's healthcare, education, and you try and morph them into the smartphone environment. Very compelling new user cases and experiences begin to come alive. So this is where at least the iOS ecosystem is moving towards, and I think it's full of opportunities for people in this room. Google's having its developer conference. It started about 24 hours back. Here are some of the early stuff I just pulled off on the web. They're activating 1 million devices a day. Think about that, guys. That's like 12 Google Android devices getting activated every second and growing fast. So this is coming at you guys like a tsunami. Before you know it, everything around you is going to be Android, and you better be prepared for it. If there was one message I want to give you guys as mobile developers sitting out of NCR, think of the world as a large marketplace that you can play in, and use Android as the vehicle to try and address it. Make it core to your strategy. We always complain that the Google guys didn't have enough applications as compared to the Apple guys. It looks like they've caught up. So it's about 600,000 applications that are now available, and these are all your games that we all sort of live and work with every day. 20 billion cumulative downloads now on the Google Android app stores. That number, if I'm not wrong, was actually almost half only earlier this year. So it's growing, and it's growing fast again. So clearly, the consumption, will users come, will they engage? The answer is a thumping yes. So we shouldn't sort of think of this as a demand-starved situation. People are going to be there, they're going to have the devices, and they're going to consume. The question is, do you have something that's worthwhile for them to actually consume? That's where the challenge is, if you will, going forward. Here are some of the early tech launches that have started in the last 24 hours. You should read about them, but they've got some interesting, stuff going around. People with Google glasses, skydiving out of planes, using augmented reality. They clearly are continuing to innovate on the Android platform. They've got some interesting new features coming out on Jelly Bean. A lot of it, again, is voice. Think about that. The second time we're hearing voice. Offline voice browsing is being integrated into Jelly Bean. There could be very interesting applications for people like us. In India, we've always said voice services have traditionally been doing very well. You look like a company like Just Dial. It grew on the back of voice. Again, if voice actually starts to work, in our kind of setup, and I agree that it's a hard tech problem to solve with all the multiple accents, it could be pretty compelling as a whole new slew of services that we can see in our markets. Okay? So let me summarize all of that by saying there's a lot of change going on in the marketplace. A lot of it on the mobile side is happening on the smartphone categories. It's being driven out of the valley. I would strongly, if I was a bunch of guys starting a company right now, make sure that Android and smartphone is at the core of what we do. Is Java and feature phones important? Of course it is. Look at the masses that use it. But I think that change is happening faster than you think. And it's not that far along as you sort of dream out there that you'll be able to actually work on those applications, work those applications on Java phones at price points that are reasonably unbelievable as we sit today. Okay? That's phase one of the presentation. Let me move to the second part of the conversation. I'm going to try and pick a few companies that Sequoia has been fortunate enough to be an investor in. And I'm going to try and use that to share a few lessons that we've learned along with the companies as they've gone by that. Again, the attempt here is that you as entrepreneurs would find it useful and wouldn't make the same mistakes and hopefully make new ones as you go through your journey. These are good examples of global mobile companies that I think all of us here in this room use. The message here is we get inundated with a lot of business plans by mobile entrepreneurs who say, I'm going to bring what's on the web onto the mobile. And that worked for a while. But actually the real innovation is saying, as a result of there being so many mobile devices, what new user needs exist? What new things need to be solved? And how do I innovate in a mobile-only or a mobile-first mentality? Think about that. It's quite different than trying to sort of package the web into a mobile device. That's not as exciting, frankly. There are a lot of people doing that, right? Dropbox saw that. Proliferation of devices means new problems. Oh my God, trying to sync my data, my video, my files, my pictures across multiple devices, it's a huge issue. Using cute UI, using fantastic technology backend to make it really easy for you to drop a single file onto your PC Dropbox and have it miraculously show up in a bunch of other platforms is the hard problem to solve. And that's what these guys grew big on the back of. They innovated because there was a new need to ensure that your data was synced across multiple devices. And they did it really, really well in a consumer-friendly way. It's a great example for you to be able to think mobile first and then sort of anything else on the internet. Instagram. The message I want to use on Instagram is the following, and I think the previous panel highlighted this for you guys. It's all about the metrics. If you're a mobile entrepreneur and you build applications, the one thing you want to make sure your application is doing is it has a high engagement level. We just talked about how there are 600,000 plus applications sitting on the different app stores and growing really fast. Why wouldn't a user keep on evaluating new applications and keep downloading it? It's most common for us to see people have close to 500 to 600 applications on their phones. The old stuff just gets lost, if you will, in the clutter. If you want to stay relevant, you will have to drive engagement of your application. And one simple metric that you normally hear around that is just measure the number of daily active users, measure the number of monthly active users, and that percentage, that ratio should be high. If 20% of your people who come on a monthly basis also come on a daily basis, it's a good application trending really well. If that number starts moving up towards 30, 40, 50%, you know you're onto something really big. Notice I haven't started talking about dollars yet. I'm not talking about monetization. If you can get people to stay on your app, they will pay. But first, get them to stay. Because there are too many applications and too easy, and with a flick of a switch, you can actually get a new application. So it's all about being able to drive user engagement, and that's what Instagram taught us. Just phenomenal level of engagement where people used it on a daily basis. Okay? This is an example closer to home. And this, we often get asked as investors here in India, oh, but look at all the great innovation happening in the valley. It's so hard. It's all happening there. How do I do it from India? We're a services mentality. We don't have a product mentality, so on and so forth. Look, if you're looking for excuses, there are many. I think part of it here in India is you are actually sitting in a market that's away from other things, and that's got benefits. But it's all got to start with the audacity, if you will, of an entrepreneur to say, I'm going to take on the big guys. I'm going to try and steal with pride whatever ideas I can, adapt them into our market, and see how I can scale on the back of that. So a strong message to you guys is, it's such a huge market, the mobile is. Of course, there's going to be tons of innovation going on outside, but it doesn't mean if someone is bigger than you, you can't really take them on in your own little way. And I think companies have proven it over and over again in our markets. So I would strongly recommend, once again, that you think of yourself as a global company emanating out of India, tap into all the resources that India gives you, fly to the valley, sit in on the developer conferences, build the networks of the VCs that you know, so play a global game sitting out of India. Third message. When you start a company, it's really hard to figure out what's going to work, clearly. You need to really get quick at failing. We often get debated at boards in our companies about, look, I got limited resources, I'm a young company, I need to pick my spots. Of course, you need to have focus. But the companies that really succeed are those that are able to try multiple ideas, but not get distracted with the ones that are not working. So they try a lot of stuff, they iterate really quickly, the market tells them, the consumers tell them whether it's working or not, and they kill really quickly. It's all about that, guys. And every company that we've seen successful started off in a different journey and became something else as it went along. And that's only to be expected as an entrepreneur. But if you don't sort of, try the shot, you're never going to make the shot. If you don't really, we often, an analogy I use at our companies is, no one is going to open the door for you to come succeed. The door is just a little ajar. You have to get up and push it open. So you have to go knock at every door and try every new business model and see which one works, and then on that you can actually scale. Via is a good example of this. I don't know how many of you have heard of this company. It's out of Bangalore. They, like everybody else, about 5-6 years back, was an online travel agent. And you know what happened to online travel agents? It's what's happening right now to the e-commerce companies. Everybody was spending way too much money trying to acquire a customer. It was a very unprofitable business. And he who could raise capital survived. The Make My Trips and so on and so forth are great examples of those. But Via realized they were not able to raise enough money to burn, to acquire customers. So he changed his business model. From an online travel agent, he said, look, I'm just going to provide a nice web interface to all the travel agents that sit all across the country. And as a result of that change strategy, he actually ended up doing about 10% of low-cost airline ticketing through his system. So think about this. The original business model was, I'm going to go on the web, have a great customer UI, and I'm going to try and acquire customers like ClearTrip, Make My Trip, so on and so forth. When he was not able to make that work, he stepped back and said, I'll provide my software to every small little travel agent all across the country. And I'll use that as a way to sort of source customers. Let them spend to acquire their local customers in their local communities, but I'll service them on the back end. That worked. So you got to keep changing, got to keep pivoting, and that's what entrepreneurship's all about on the mobile side. Here's a great example. I hope you guys have read the recent press. We're proud owners of a larger part of Just Dial than we were even before. We love this company. We think this company is onto something really big and is going to be a long-term sustainable success story from India for many, many years. A lot of it comes from Mani's sheer passion for product. If you ever want to get Mani's interest, all you got to tell him is your product's not good, and he'll be at your doorstep asking you why and how he fixes it. But I think the interesting point out of Just Dial is this is a good example of how people say, look, China has Baidu, China has all these great global internet companies, India doesn't have them. Because English is dominant in our country, and China has a language barrier. Therefore, it's going to be very hard to create a tech internet company out of India. Not true. Just Dial used a very interesting online-offline model. Its entry barrier that it's created is it's got a huge, large workforce that every day is working across, I think, something like 200 plus cities of the country, working with local merchants, knowing what their data is, and asking them to sort of pay for keywords when people call into the Just Dial number in order for them to get leads and generate leads. It's not a simplistic web business that somebody with larger, deeper pockets can walk into your country and take over your early leadership. If you've built the entry barriers around your business model, in this case an offline, on Just Dial, it's really hard to do that. And of course, your product's got to work. So I think each one here would sign up to Just Dial for no other reason other than that in 30 seconds you get what we're looking for, and it's really hard to do that. And when you call them in, that SMS ping comes onto your phone, and you actually have the most relevant information that you were looking for. So a working product with entry barriers makes a very, very nice adversary for any large, deep-pocketed international player walking into our country. So think about entry barriers as you begin to succeed. And my final slide. The world's crowded. this opportunity that we've just discussed for the last 10 minutes here is obvious to everyone else as well. I think gone are the day of generalists. Gone are the days of someone saying, I'm going to be a Me Too company. I heard this company just got funded in the US. I'm going to start a business that does that and try and see if I can attract funding as well. The world has moved into specialists. If you're starting a business in the loyalty space, if you're starting a business in the payment space, if you're starting a business in the advertising space, you better know how to do that. And you better know how to do that with insights that others don't have. So it's all about the team that you build there. The example I'm highlighting here is a company called Prism Payments. These guys lived all their lives in the ATM and point of sale industry here in India, worked for multiple multinational companies, and at the ripe old age of 45 decided to become first-time entrepreneurs. And they've ended in Prism building one of the largest, fastest growing independent payment companies in India because they basically understood the nuances of why and how an ATM can be run profitably in this country. And because they had those insights, they were able to run 12,000 ATMs more profitably than any other bank. And they're actually a fast-growing transaction processor on other mobile payment solutions as well. This is Square-like devices is the picture that I've got here. So the point I'm making here again is make sure that the team around the table that you've assembled are deep domain expertise in the areas that you want to try and build sustainable value in. Gone are the days of being able to be a Me Too business, raise capital, generate traffic, and then see how you can sustain. Yeah? I'm going to summarize with that and use that as my last slide, but hopefully this is enough fodder for us all to have a deeper discussion, and happy to take any questions. Yeah, sure. There's a mic just coming to you.
Hello, I'm Divya Singhal from Network 18 Group. Now, I've got a question regarding this mobility, the opportunity that we have in front of us. So is it like gonna take the path what US and UK have taken, or is it gonna be different? Because what I believe is behaviorally or culturally, the Indian users may perceive it differently, the way we consume the content, or the bottlenecks in terms of the speed issues in 3G, broadband is there, but it's not there in terms of speed delivery. These are the issues that which are confronting for the takeoff. So is it gonna take that path, or is it gonna take different path? Digital is the future, no doubt about that.
Look, some similarities, some differences. But no doubt in my mind, 5 years later, we'll be 5x bigger on all metrics that you want to count. Will it all play out the same way? Will the payments happen the same way? Hell no, of course not. There are only 18 million credit cards in this country, and they're degrowing compared to those markets. Will there be other ways to monetize it? Absolutely. Will the same content that we consume be consumed by them? No, not at all. It'll be our content. It'll be different content. Will we all pay for it the way we pay there? Probably not. There's a lot more free apps that happens in this part of the world. But I just think that the compelling thing that you cannot stop, and this is the similarity part, is that if everyone in their phone, in their device, it has the capability that we are seeing today that our brethren have in those markets, it is a very, very changed world. And I think some of the obstacles that we are seeing in front of us, bandwidth, pricing, these are temporary. If you're an entrepreneur right now, you're an investor in this world, you have to look at a 4 to 5 year picture at least. And you have to bet in the next 5 to 6 years, so these things are going to be whittled away slowly but surely. I honestly believe, guys, that the next 5 years are very different than the previous 5 years. And anyone who's looking in the rear view mirror and driving right now is going to crash.
My another related question is, will this mode of consumption replace the conventional media like the cable DTH or IPTV, whatever it is? Or it's going to create its own new space in terms of content consumption?
Again, I think a combination thereof. I know a lot of people, Wall Street Journal, I don't know the latest metric, but Wall Street Journal has moved reasonably quickly and quite well into these digital formats quite well. So there's a good example of traditional media moving quickly and well. Are there a whole new set of use cases that will happen in mobile-only companies? Think of blogs, think of Pinterest, think of those kinds of things? Absolutely. I think there will be some people who won't make the shift. And there'll be new sort of formats, there'll be new kind of content, there'll be new kind of publishers who'll come up because of these devices only. So again, it's like asking, I think all I'm saying is there's a sea change happening in how and what devices these things are going to be consumed on. Some will make the shift, some won't.
See, it's gonna be, another question is a content-driven thing. The way I have understood so far, it's like the one who has got the differentiated content is gonna be the leader in this space. So who will, the blink first, in the sense the broadcasters who would be like spending too much in content creation, or you would see the consumer changing their preferences to take onto this mobile consumption pattern, and then how would you work out your business models?
We're believers in the consumers. Flipboard is a great example of how it's not about the content, it's about how you package it, how you present it, and how you make it easy and searchable and discoverable, and make it socially shareable and so on and so forth. It's got nothing to do with how great the content was. So for us at least, the change and the innovation is going to come from consumers, and they will vote with their time, they will vote with their clicks, they will vote with their downloads, and publishers will have to morph to that. It's an opinionated view, as you can imagine. I apologize to all the publishers.
You've also got an investment in a services company through Dr. Lal's Path Labs.
Yes.
How would mobile be useful for a company which is in that space?
It's a good question. It's a good question. Actually, Dr. Lal ironically was debating that with us not so very far back, because today his reach is in Delhi, it's in larger pockets of Western India. He hasn't even tapped the whole rural side of things. Every healthcare company today is thinking about telemedicine. Every healthcare company is thinking about a hub and spoke model. How do I use these intelligent devices to be able to bring in more demand from those places where it's very expensive for me to go put people in today? But can I use technology for that last leg? So Dr. Lal is thinking of a bunch of innovations around tablets, around some of the smartphone devices. Looks like we're out of time. Wonderful talking to you guys, and stay pumped, and forget some of the obstacles in front of us immediately right now. Just innovate, and do come see us at Sequoia. Thank you.